Hey everybody, welcome to Exercise Check. In this video, we're going to be going into model validation that can be found in 13.5 of our reading. Let's dive into it. As always, we start on our page. We're up here at 13.5 exercises for model validation. Let's practice by adding more fields into our event objects and validating them. We're going to create a new branch off of the display errors branch in our coding events in IntelliJ that I have open behind me. And then it lets us know that we can go ahead and see it via coding events demo code here if we need to see that. I do want to put a reminder in before I get started here that there were previous videos in this chapter that you will need to watch in order to complete this one. Let's go into IntelliJ now and make that new branch. I come up here, I say new branch, and I'm going to call it exercise 13. There we go. I see that now in my exercise 13 branch. Let's go back and see what we need to do. It says we need to describe some new fields for our event class. For each field, consider the following factors. What we'll need to call our field, what kind of accessor do we want to put on our field, what type of input should be used to capture it, what are the annotations we need to put on it to do some validation, and if they get the validation wrong, what should the error be that we show back to our user, and then what, if anything, will we need to update on the controller to account for the new field. So keeping this in mind, we're going to move down to the next section. This is the event information we have to add. Add a field to collect information about where the event will take place. This field should not be blank or null. Let's do this one first. I'm going to copy this and bring it over into our code. I come up here and we're going to create that new class variable. I'm going to paste what I copied. So we need to collect information about where the event will take place. So I know this is going to be a location. So I'm going to create a private string location. It says then it should not be null. So I'm going to add that annotation now. And it says also not be blank. So I'm going to add that other annotation as well. The section above says we need to consider what to display back to the user if the validation is not correct, as in if it is null or if it is blank, what should we show to the user? So I put in parentheses here and I type in message, and I'm going to say if it's null or blank, I'm going to report back that the location is required. So I'm going to copy this exact same message and put it down here for not blank. Great, so now that I have my validation here, I need to create getters and setters for this location. So I right click, I'm going to press generate, getter and setter, go to location, press OK. There we go, and I see my getters and setters are then set for my location. One more thing I'm going to do also is that I know that this is required, so I'm going to put it in my constructor, as well as set it here too. The location looks like it's all set up. Now let's go into our form and add that there as well. We come into our create.html, and now I'm going to add a place that the user can put a location. So I'm going to copy the email here, come down here, I'm going to say event location. I change that to location, form control, the error, and then I need to change this to location as well. Great. So one last thing I need to do is that whenever the user wants to see all of their events, I want to include the location there as well. So I go into index and I'm going to add it to the table. Add a new column here, and I'm going to call for a location here. I'm also going to add it to the header so we know what we're looking at. Great. So let's save this and make sure it runs. Our server is started. We come back here, type in localhost 8080. I press create event, and now I see that my event location text box is here. So great. Let's go ahead now and try out the form. So I provide a name, an email, and now I'm not going to provide a location because I want to test out that validation. I press create, and I see that I get back my error validation. Location is required. That means everything here is working for validation, but let's see if it actually goes through if we provide a location. So I'm going to say San Francisco. Press create, and we see that our object for our event has been created. Test event, a description, test email, and San Francisco for the location. Great, this is what we need to see. Let's go back and see what we need to do next. We need to add a field to collect information about whether an attendee must register for an event or not. For purposes of validation practice, we need to make sure that this field can only be marked as true. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this so I can refer back to it in my code. I'm going to start just like last time in our event class. Come down here and I paste that description. So it says we need to collect the information whether or not an attendee must register for an event or not. Whether or not, yes or no, means that it needs to be true or false, aka a Boolean. So I'm going to say private Boolean should register. It said for validation practice that we need to make sure that this value should only be true. So the annotation here I want to use is assert true, meaning that it can only be set to true. If they try to set it to false, I'm going to display a message. I display a brief message to the user in case I do try to select false. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to set this one to true here. I'm not going to place it in my constructor. I'm going to do this because our direction said it should always be true. But I'm still going to generate a getter and setter for it. So if they do want to try to set it to false, I still provide that option, but it will just fail validation. Again, we're doing this just for practice. So let's go ahead and generate our getters and setters for should register. Now that that's complete, we have to do a few more things. We have to first go over to create and create another form for the user to select if or if not the attendee should register. I save that. And now once I create my form here, I'm going to go back to index and I'm going to create another column for should register. I'm going to call this table header attendee should register. Save that, restart our server, and let's see what goes on here. Awesome, we come back over here to our localhost, refresh, create an event, and we're going to go ahead and fill out our form. And now in here it says that it's already being asserted to true. It's automatically being set to true. So I'm going to try typing in false here. It says that this event must have attendees register, the exact error message that we wanted to show if it was typed into false. The only thing I don't really like here is that we're typing in false here or it's showing true. True or false, a yes or no question, should not have a text box to show this. Instead, I want to use a checkbox. So I'm going to come back over to my code here. So I'm going to come back over here to create.html, come up here to my input tag, type in type equals checkbox. And let's see if that does anything now. We come back over to our page, go to all events, refresh, create event, and now we see a nice checkbox here that's automatically selected as true. So let's type this in again, test event, description, test at mail.com, and somewhere. And now let's try to uncheck this. Press create, and it looks like we must have it set to true in order for this to be valid. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and select this, now press create, and now it actually creates our object here for our event. Great, this is what we want to see. Let's keep moving forward. Add a field to collect information about the number of attendees for the event. Valid values for this field should be any number over 0. So, two things about this that I want to comment on. It says that it should be valid for any values over 0, meaning it should not be blank and it should not be null, and it should be greater than 0. So it sounds like 3 different annotations for this one. Let's go to our code and do this. We go back to event.java, come back over here, paste that description as always, and then we come down here and we need to create our class variable. It says we need to have a number of attendees. I know a number of attendees is not going to be a string, it's not going to be a decimal, so it's going to be an integer. So I'm going to say private, and I'm going to make this integer a class. Because I said I don't want it to be null, and I don't want it to have a size of less than 0. Only classes can be null. So I can only use the annotation on classes. So it has a capital I integer, and I'm going to say num of attendees. Num for number. Down here, I said I'm going to put the first annotation not null. My message will say at least one attendee. Great. And then we said we needed to have at least one attendee. So I'm going to use that size annotation. I'm going to say my min has to be at least 1. But I'm not going to put a max because it never said we had a max capacity we could have for this event, as well as add that message. There we go. And then I'm going to set this number of attendees into my constructor. Once I'm done with that, of course, I come down here and I do my getters and setters. There we go. Once that's all finished, go to create. We take this form control here, paste it. We're going to take out checkbox because we want actually a text box. And we're going to say num of attendees. There we go. Change the label. And then finally go to our index.html and we create a new column for it. There we go. All right, restart a server and let's see what we get. Come back, press back, refresh, fill in our information. And I see that I'm getting my error because I'm using the size constraints on my integer. That's because I completely made a small mistake here. Let's go back. I should not have been using size on this. I actually need to use minimum or min here. And instead of min here, what I need to put is value. So there we go. Now we actually have our minimum up here. Size is only for strings. Min is actually for integers and other numeric values. So let's go ahead and rerun this. Come back, go back, refresh, enter in our information, and press create. And now it says at least one attendee required. Perfect. Let's go ahead and put in 0 now. Still says the exact same thing. So let's go ahead and put in 1. Create, and now our object is created. Perfect. Exactly what we need to see. Let's keep going forward. Browse all the validation annotations to find one to use on another new field of your choosing. So we get to bring in our own creativity here. So let's go back to our event class. Perfect. So now I need to think, what do I exactly want to create for my event that is not here just yet? Well, being it be dinner time right when I'm creating this video, I'm going to say the field I'm going to create here is number of courses because I'm hoping this event at least has a snack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say private number of courses. I'm going to make it an integer once again. I'm going to say num of food courses. So my validation will be on this, that I will only come to this event first if it's not null. I'll add messages here in a second. I'm going to add that min, because it is going to be numeric value once again, and say they have to have at least one course. But I'm also going to have a max. I don't want more than 3 courses because that's just going to make the event way too long. And it's just going to put me to sleep because that's too much food. So there we go. And now I'm going to add messages. That'll be my message there. I'm going to copy that and paste that down here. Great. So let's go ahead and create getters and setters. There we go. Once we do that, we have to go now back to create, and we have to create a text box for a number of courses. So I'm going to say instead of number of attendees, it's number of food courses. I called that variable num of food courses. There we go. And the last thing I'm going to do, though, is that even up here for number of attendees and down here, we know that our type is not going to be a string per se that they're going to type in, but a number. So I'm going to say the input type of this one should be a number, just so I know that the person typing this in should actually be typing in a number, not just some generic text. Save that, go back over to index, and of course create our final table header here for number of food courses. And then of course a cell down here to display that information. There we go. Restart our server and let's see what we get. Come over here, go back to our page, refresh, create an event. We see that we have a number of food courses now. Let's fill in some test information. Let's say 1 attendee and press create. We see that we must have a number of food courses between 1 and 3. I'm going to put 10, way too much. There we go. How about 0? Looks like all our validation is working. Let's say we're going to have 2 courses. create, and we see that our object is now coming back. Perfect. We are good on this one for number of food courses. Coming back over here, that seems like it's the last event we have to do for this exercise. That being said, we are all done with this exercise, as well as getting into the fun of using these annotations to do that validation. Thanks for watching.